We have once again back at Saptarishis Astrology, Swamiji. Swamiji, welcome to Saptarishis Astrology.
Thank you. Thank you. A pleasure to be back here again.
You are in Portugal right now?
Yep.
Okay. Teaching Vedanta, I presume.
Actually, I've been doing a lot of Vastu this time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we're traveling around and doing a lot of Vastu. So you'll see those tapes actually on my website.
Oh, great.
Vastu.
Great.
Yeah.
Just for the audience, if you can just tell for the new ones, the name of your website.
Oh, it's svatmananda.org. So it's SVATMANANDA.org. There's somebody else who is SW, but that's a different guy. That's a different Swami, not me.
Okay. Okay. Swamiji, we've had great responses on forgiveness, and just for the attention of the audience, we've shot this second part once again a couple of weeks back when Swamiji was in Berlin, and because of some technical problem at my end on recording, we have to reshoot. But it's a fresh thought, quite a certain amount of comments have come in of the audiences, and we would take up some of those comments from the YouTube videos under the comment section. We'll take up some of the comments, some really wonderful questions they've asked, thought-provoking, and it's not easy for me to answer. Okay, and I'm quite sure, everybody will have a different response to some of the questions like that. But the whole bottom line of all spirituality eventually boils down to love. Is any action of yours out of love? Forgiveness. Just because you saw a video on forgiveness, okay, then you want to break that karmic pattern. But if your intention is just to break that karmic pattern, or is your intention completely coming out of love, the energy of love? Okay, this person has done this thing against me, let me forgive. I love him. That love from within. And that's when your heart chakra opens up and the healing happens. Am I right, Swamiji?
Absolutely. In fact, we should probably just do another video just on love. Anyway, let me put this in a context. What we don't realize as human beings is that the only reason, in fact, the primary reason for our existence, for us to incarnate as a human being, the primary, there's nothing beyond this. The primary reason is to express ourselves through love, with love, by love. I mean, there's everything you break down, every form of spirituality, everything in existence. The only purpose of human existence is to be, to respond, to behave, to react. All of that is with love. You can be as spiritual as you want, but if you do not know how to respond with love, that spirituality doesn't help. Because love itself is an act of spiritual response. It's a way of spiritual living. But, it's easy for us to say, yeah, be love, respond with love. There are many subsets. If you're drawing a flowchart diagram, you say, okay, everything is love. Then what are some of the subsets? And of course, one of the subsets is forgiveness. And like we mentioned in the first video, the forgiveness is not only for other people, but for oneself. If you translate that, you say, what does forgiveness mean? When you say you forgive someone, it's an act of love to forgive someone else. But then we tend to forget about ourselves because we always relate to somebody else. So when you say you do a forgiveness, you embark on an act of forgiving oneself, that is self-love. You also love yourself. And this is something we don't embark on. We're constantly bothered about what other people will think about us, what they will do, what this and that. What we forget is how to love ourselves. So, like I said, this whole business of love is another vast topic that, very few people have addressed. But today we'll talk about forgiveness because this is a subset, a very vital component of aspect of love. So, we'll focus on love and forgiveness because
Swamiji,
that's where we need to focus this time.
right. Swamiji, before the act of forgiveness comes in, okay, I believe, and here you must correct me, is let's assume 2000 events or incidents have happened in my life, okay, from the time I've been born. And I need to probably forgive those 2000 people or 2000 incidents. Okay. Now what happens is, okay, I'm trying to tell you how I have been battling my own self, my own self growth. And I'm quite sure many other of the viewers are also in the same boat like me. Is out of these 2000 incidents, okay, that has happened, I might actually feel, because I'm not an evolved soul, and I still have anger, I still have hatred, I still have competition element, I still have that, various emotions within me. I might believe, okay, I need to probably only forgive 1000 because I have not done a self-inquiry, a detailed self-reflection. I might believe that, hey, I was the one hurt, so why should I forgive? Here is where the common thinking comes in. Whereas I like to believe further is, if somebody's hurt me or if I have hurt somebody, okay, the process is the same. Seeking forgiveness, giving forgiveness.
Absolutely.
Both are applicable. And I honestly believe, in the last, as I told you last time, last 2.5 years has been quite a bit on me, where I have felt the guilt in the sense, I've been, the right word I'm not getting. I have felt as a targeted person, that, hey, the world is this against me, that against me, business is not going good. So everything I'm blaming others or the exterior circumstances,
That's right.
I sometimes think when a man goes through like that, there is a strong possibility that instead of blaming others, they are only acting as friends in disguise.
Mm-hmm.
Friends in disguise, they are enemies externally, but they are actually friends in disguise as enemies. And they are pushing me to evolve and see and take the blame for the whole situation. Because if somebody has slapped me, let's assume that, okay, somebody has slapped me, there has to be two people involved, the other person and me. If I have done nothing wrong in any lifetime, why should I be present in that situation to receive a slap? Or it's a new karma. So any which ways, I feel the easiest option is to listen to what you said. And I felt that the best statement I've heard in a very long time is, the reason our existence is to respond to every situation with love. When we have that in our heart, then we have it to forgive. So what do you feel should be the process of forgiving? Should self-inquiry be a correct approach? Then we start the process of forgiving as a daily ritual or with love, whatever. Please.
Yeah. So, one of the glorious things about our teaching, the Vedas, is that it proves beyond any shadow of doubt that we are one. Okay, so let's take that to be a fact, because that's a whole different teaching altogether. But I can tell you, without any doubts, that we are one. Given that, okay, we have to use that as a premise. We cannot discuss that right now, but given that, so let's take the example of what you just presented. This guy comes and slaps you. Okay. You can say, why did he do that? we can assume that you are just standing along, minding your own business, and this guy comes and slaps you. We can speculate because we can never really look at the full ramification of why that incident happened. But you are standing there minding your own business. By the way, this happened to me as a child. So I was there as my young boy, and one kid came and slapped me, just out of the blue, because I was well dressed. I was of a different race, and he probably took out his anger, against Indians through me. What that propelled me to do was to get into martial arts. I got into bodybuilding and kung fu because of that one slap. Because I never wanted that to happen again to me.
So he was a friend in disguise.
Absolutely. So, I can give you an example of Muhammad Ali. He became the greatest fighter, but you know what was the cause for him to be the greatest fighter? Was somebody stole his bicycle.
Really?
Yeah. So somebody stole his bicycle, and he was so angry about that, he said he's going to defend himself, and he got into boxing. But that was the nimitta of him becoming the greatest boxer till today. So that's why I'm saying you can never know the ramification. We can say, we can argue, and this is just merely speculation, that, okay, you were standing, or I was standing, and somebody came and slapped me, that I must have slapped him in his last life. It could be true, but it's simplistic. Many times whenever we're going through pain and suffering, we go back to memory. We go back to the past. Why did he do this to me? How could he do this to me? Why should he have done this to me? All of those things are how we emote. It's natural. But it doesn't serve any purpose. Past has happened. Milk has spilled. We cannot cry over it. What we need to do is have the wisdom to move forward. Okay, what are we going to do about this situation? Muhammad Ali decided to do something about him. He got into boxing. That was his nimitta to get into. Otherwise, how would he become the greatest boxer in the world? If you look at Muhammad Ali's chart, you could see when that incident happened. You could see how he became the greatest boxer in the world, because he was destined to become the greatest boxer in the world. But how could he be pushed into that track? If I look back in my life, and I look back in my chart, okay, right before that time, in fact, there were two guys that actually slapped me, and that became a thing that propelled me to get into bodybuilding and get into kung fu, martial arts. And that actually transformed my body, transformed who I am. It gave me the confidence I needed. So those two slaps were a gift. And I go back and I think about that guy who slapped me, and I think, wow, that was amazing. And I feel gratitude towards him and happy that he actually pushed me into what I needed to do. But, it could be true that I might have slapped him in a past life. Otherwise, he would not want to just come up and slap me. But if we go back and look at our past lives, that's not helping us. Well, the question is, what have we learned from this situation? If the guy came and slapped you, what happened after that? What was the thing that propelled you to do? What was the lessons that you learned from that process? That is more important than whether he slapped you or not. Yeah. So in this process, one of the things, in order to realize the value of an incident that is unpleasant or tragic, we have to begin with forgiveness. Correct. So we say to the guy who slapped you, thank you. No, I forgive you.
Correct.
I forgive you for doing this to me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm paying off a past life debt.
True.
Maybe I slapped you in the past life and you're slapping me back. In that case, thank you, we're closing a chapter. If nothing happens after that, if, however, that slap propelled you to do something, in time, you will realize the significance of that slept and what it made you do. How did it change you? How did you grow from that? Once you begin to realize that, you find gratitude. So there are a few steps. We learn to forgive others. We learn to forgive ourselves. And in that, once that process is done, we come to a place of gratitude once we evolve. But to come to a place of gratitude is not easy, and it takes a lot of evolution processes before we get there.
Seriously, true, true. I would like to share something since it's a conversation, and we're going to be having many such conversations in June.
Sure.
But you talked about your childhood. By the way, I checked Muhammad Ali's chart regarding that bike incident. It's wonderful, especially past life astrology. But
Yeah.
an incident when I was in the 4th standard, and I had this dentist. This guy, I was getting some braces done. So the specialist was called in, and this guy was from New York. He was New York return, and very handsome guy, very flashy guy, great bodybuilder, and he had long hair, and an extremely handsome, used to look like a foreigner, although being an Indian. So while he was getting things operated on my teeth, he asked me what standard you are in. I said, I'm in so-and-so standard. He said, what is your ranking? I said, I'm somewhere 36th or something. So he instantly pointed in the dentist room. There was a guy mopping the floor, He said, you won't even get a job with that ranking. You won't even get that kind of job. Now that somewhere was a very deep hurt to me. And in that same year, from 36th rank, I stood 3rd or 4th in the class. And after that, I never looked back. I was always a topper in a way. And of course, I used to study just to please my father, just to see that once a year he would smile, which would be a half smile when he would see my report. And if it's really good, maximum he'll see it, and he's got a big belly. He will just laugh. So the belly will move. That's where I know that, okay, my dad's happy. But he kept his emotions hidden.
Yeah.
I believe, as you said, any incident, many people are having bad marriages. Many people are having bad businesses or problems in business. Okay. And it's easy for me to preach this, or it's easy for me to say, but if we take each instance, okay, this mistake happened in business, this much money loss. If we take that instance and see, what am I learning from this?
Right.
Can I correct it? If yes, when and how? And by when? By when? So that in itself becomes a remedy to forgive that incident. It's not just forgiving people. Forgiving humans is one part. But what we did not discuss in the previous video is forgiving incidents. And incidents like economy going down, etc., etc. You can blame Trump, you can blame Modi, you name it. Or you can blame China for it. So economy going down. Now, what kind of karma is that? Whom should I forgive? Who's responsible for it?
Yeah. So, you might have heard this in our tradition. We say Om Shanti 3 times, right? And so, basically, when we say Om Shanti 3 times, we're asking for forgiveness in a way. When we say Om Shanti, we're asking for Shanti in 3 areas. From the gods, from the devatas, from my own Atmika, and then also from the Bhautika, which is from the circumstances, tsunamis, floods, weather-related things, circumstantially related things, So we're asking that we don't be, affected by these things. That's why we say Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti 3 times. So one of the things, in order to understand the whole picture better, again, that's quite complex and requires, again, more time, is that we have to look at the collective karma of that whole situation. Why did Americans vote Trump in? Collective karma. Why did the Germans elect Hitler in? Collective karma. So there's a collective karma, and then we have our own individual karmic palam based within the collective situation. So in that situation, you see, in all situations, we can start thinking about all the other different factors. And it is very natural for our minds to behave that way. What about this and what about that? And at the end of the day, when we boil everything down, we come to one point only, and that is me. Because every situation, whether it's the economic situation, whether it's Modi, the wars, I mean, you look at the Rohingya crisis in Burma, in Myanmar, you look at all the riots that are going on, especially something I predicted this year, which I see happening. All the circumstantial boils down to how you respond. Okay? And of course, without blaming the weather, because you see, when we have a flood, it's hard to blame anyone. When we have tornadoes, or in California last year, there were tremendous fires. You see, we cannot blame anyone. We blame God. And then when that happens, we say, oh, well, you deal with it very differently from when someone harms you. If somebody comes and takes away your house, you will have this enmity and anger for next 5 lifetimes. I'm just guessing. That's not true. Okay, I'm just trying to make a point. But if a flood comes in and takes over your house, who are you going to blame?
Exactly.
So the question is, the whole point, it boils down, without getting it too complex into so many different scenarios, is that how do you deal with the situation? It's not why it happened. It's not how it happened. And it's not who did it. And I find that this is very typical of actually our Indian culture. When something happens, immediately the response is, who told you that? I find that very interesting when somebody says that. Who told you that? Who made you do that? Why did it? Whose fault is it? We're quickly looking for someone's fault. What we don't realize that negative situation did not take place for no purpose. The negative situation, however hard it may be, however inconceivable it may be, however tragic it may be, is there, happened, presented itself for one simple reason, and one reason only, and that is for you to grow. It was presented for you, not for your children, not for your loved ones, not for your parents, for you individually to grow. Your children, your loved ones, your parents, everybody else, they have their own karmic phalam to deal with. They have their own learning trajectory that has nothing to do with your own trajectory. But these situations, the economic situation, the circumstantial situations, and also the individuals who make your life hell, are a blessing in disguise. They're there for you to grow. And the only way you can start growing is to stop blaming them, to take control of the situation, to take control of your emotion, because to be very frank, you have to ask yourself, are you in control of your emotion, or is someone else in control of your emotion? If you say that you are fully in control, then you should be able to control your emotions. If you say you are not in control of who you are and how your emotions respond, then you have no control over yourself. If you have no control over yourself, how can you blame other people? How can you blame the government or somebody else? The thing that you have to realize is get control of your own emotions if you think you are independent and free. If you cannot control your emotions, that means you're not free. Okay? So if you can control your emotions, then the second part is don't blame that person, looking at the situation and saying, how can I deal with this situation? When I say learn, okay, so get control of your emotion is the first part. The second part is to look at that situation and let go the bonds, the karmic ties that brought you into that situation in the first place. We do that by forgiveness. The forgiveness is to only simply to break the anchor. To break the anchor so that the ship can move on, so that the boat can move on. It's like a rope. You need to move on, but you're tied to this thing. The only way to break that tie is to forgive the person who is holding you back, is to forgive the person who has brought you into that tragic situation, because that's the bond, that's the rope. Once you break that tie, you forgive that person, you forgive yourself for being in that situation, then your boat starts moving. You start then moving towards understanding what is it that you need to learn from this situation. You cannot start learning about the situation if you don't know, if you still have anger towards this person, if you're still blaming this person, if you're still accusing God, or if you're still accusing, the people that hurt you. You cannot learn from that situation if you still have this blame and you haven't taken ownership of your behavior, or you haven't taken ownership of the situation. So forgiveness is a critical part of breaking that tie, breaking that chain, the bondage that you have with that person. Once you break that bondage, then you can say, okay, now let's look at the situation and learn what is it that I need to grow from. And then from there, we can then say, okay, well, once you appreciate and accept the situation, then you can say, oh, well, because of what I have learned, because of what I have gained, because of who I am today from this process, I feel gratitude towards this person. This is another very high level of reaching, which very, very few people can get to. But, that's the end result of that.
So, Swamiji, I want to move on to some of the questions asked in the YouTube comment section. But
Right.
before we do that, and I will also take up some hypothetical situations of the real practical way of forgiving. Some hypothetical situations I will take up. But before that, I want to ask you a question. Last time when I met you and I came back and we were discussing something, I think it was on email or something, you had mentioned Praishchit karmas or some Praishchit Upayas, or I'm forgetting the name, it's a year back.
Praishchit.
What is it in your tradition or in Vedanta? What is it that is?
Okay. That's a very, very good question, especially because this is a Jyotishi channel. One of the big mistakes we make, again, to make mistakes is human. Okay, so this is not judgmental. It's just that we're doing it because we don't understand. So one of the greatest things about our tradition, the Vedic tradition, it gives us a framework to work with these different facets of improving our lives. Okay, so what we have been talking about so far is when a situation arises, how to deal with it and how to grow from it and how to learn from it. Okay, but many times getting to the point of learning is the hardest thing. Even in my own life, I spent years and years learning the one lesson I needed to know, which would have taken 5 minutes if someone told me that. Okay, but I've spent 9 years trying to learn that one thing. Had someone just told me, had I had a guru or had I had someone, a wise person around me and presented the situation and they just told me that, it would have taken 5 minutes. Okay, wasted 9 years of my life trying to learn this one thing. Now, the mistake we make as Jyotishis or people who believe in astrology or people who want to study astrology is that we are always looking at a remedy, because Prayashchit karma is a remedy. One of the greatest things about Jyotisha is that we have remedies for each tragic situation, each difficult situation. Our attitude as people in general is to say, okay, I have Shani bothering me now. I'm going through Sati Sati. I'm going through this situation. And because of this situation, I have to do Prayashchit karma. My attitude in doing this is not to learn, but to avoid the problem. You see, we spend most of our time avoiding difficult situation, avoiding hardships, and by avoiding it, we are prolonging our pain. If we actually said, let me deal with this situation, we're taking the bull by its horns, as we say in America, is that if we took the situation and say, I've got to deal with this situation because it's an opportunity, it's an exam, I'm going to grow from this, you approach it with a positive attitude, and then you do Prayashchit karma is one thing. But what we do is we want to avoid the learning. By trying to avoid we want the pain to go away, because when we do that, then we stop learning. The pain will come no matter what. You're just prolonging it. So then we go and follow all these Jyotishis. We follow all these astrologers, and they'll tell me, oh, go do this ritual, go pay this one. In fact, taking on gems, which is another really a big mistake in our tradition. I mean, gems is valid, but the way it's being practiced in India, it's atrocious.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's another story. Anyway, but Prayashchit karmas, there are these karmas that are there to help us, not to avoid our problems, to help us gain the wisdom of what we need to learn in that situation. We do Prayashchit karma so that we can appease the pain. It's like this. You have a headache, or you're suffering a physical illness, you need medicine. I mean, you cannot say, I'm going to learn when I have a headache. Okay, so Prayashchit karmas are very useful, no doubt. But they are there to help us ease our past life karma. So it's a retribution for the things we did in our past lives. But at the same time, it's also presenting it, making it easier for us to learn the lessons we need to learn. If we change our attitude and we approach the teaching, we approach the Jyotisha, a Jyotishi basically, and say, hey, can we do this Prayashchit karma so that I can learn the lesson I need to learn quickly? Then it's completely different versus going to a Jyotishi and saying, can you give me Prayashchit karma so that my problem can go away?
Correct.
Yeah. And this is the fundamental problem about Prayashchit karmas. Prayashchit karmas are given there as a gift to humanity so that we can understand what's going on, and within the laws of our past karmic actions, that we can actually mitigate that pain, absorb the action that we did in the past, and at the same time, help us learn the situation, learn from it quickly. Because the only reason we are suffering is not because it's a payback. The only reason we are suffering is not because it's a punishment of something we did in the past. This is completely flawed. The only reason we are suffering is because we don't want to learn.
So true. So true.
Yeah, and so Prayashchit karma is very useful. The way we go about it is not correct. We just need to change our attitudes behind that.
Right.
Yeah.
Swamiji, thank you so much for explaining it in depth. I'll take up a very wonderful comment by Mr. S. Banerjee in the previous video. He has written, it was, okay, I'll that part where he's thanking us, I'm not mentioning it. What I want to know from Swamiji is how to forgive and forget oneself. Let's say a girl falls in love with the wrong boy, and the boy sold her to red light area, that is a prostitution racket. He's means red light area in India, that's actually a prostitution racket. So the girl who belongs to a good family, good education, ruins her life completely because she made a wrong decision. You know, she's angry with the boyfriend, and yes, she's angry with herself for taking such a wrong decision. How can she forgive herself as her whole life is ruined? She can't commit suicide. As per Swamiji, self-harm is not welcome. She just can't think that, okay, it is my past life karma, so live this hellish life. What should she do? Apart from blaming herself, God, boyfriend, what should she do? This is the post by Mr. Banerjee, S. Banerjee.
Yeah, so I actually, because we had time, and I decided to go through some of the comments. It was actually just a few weeks ago. And by the way, I should say that I did enjoy reading some of the comments. I haven't done that in the past with the other previous videos, but in this case, I was also looking to hear what people were looking for in terms of how I could help them better in presenting this concept of forgiving oneself and breaking karmic ties. And this comment that you just read, it got my attention, and I thought it was a very good example of how we can address multiple factors in this one. There are so many other great comments, actually, and I tried to respond to some if they're quick and short. But in this one, I did not respond because I wanted to respond here. So I'm glad you brought it up. Let's look at the situation. What is our first natural instinct to respond in this situation? We start blaming other, like in this girl's case, she's blaming the guy.
Yeah.
She's completely distraught, especially if you consider the Indian culture.
Correct.
This young, beautiful, lovely girl is deceived. And this is a very good example because we all get deceived. And now she's not only is deceived into a situation where she cannot come out of it because even her family won't accept her back. If she comes out, she cannot even be married to somebody else. In fact, you can say her life is completely ruined with one mistake. We can go into this useless activity of speculating the past. We can say, for argument's sake, that maybe she did the same thing to him. We can say that. We can say many things. But, we would be doing that out of ignorance because we don't know exactly what was the transaction between him and her in the past. Okay. Whatever the case may be, and this is what I was pointing out, whether it's the weather, whether it's circumstances, the economy, politics, this person, the fact of the matter is that we cannot worry about why it happened, what reasons happened. The fact is, she is where she is. Why did she get into that place? If we look at it from her perspective. Now, I'm the girl. I'll take the shoe. I'll put myself in the shoes of the girl to make this example better. I can say now my life is destroyed because of this one guy. But how did I get here? I trusted him. I loved him so much. I would do anything for him. Don't we do this when we're in love? I would do anything for you. Because you do it out of love. Okay. This is a mistake that we make when we do things out of love for someone. I'll give you another example. I'll interject another example here. Bhishma in Mahabharata took a vow because of his love for his father. Bhishma made a vow to not ever take the throne, to remain celibate, so that the throne would not be compromised. Why did he do that? Out of his love for his father. Biggest mistake, because if he did not do that, there would be no Mahabharata. The war would not take place. The whole reason for the Bhagavad Gita war, or the Mahabharata war, the suffering of generations, took place because this guy made a vow out of love in the wrong way. We do make commitments. We do give ourselves up for the wrong reasons, and we put it under the banner of love. When we started this video today, this interview, this part, we talked about responding in love. But when we talk about responding in love, we're talking about responding in love responsibly.
Correct. Correct.
Not irresponsibly. So when this girl says, I'll do anything for you, maybe that's what she told him. And he said, okay, maybe he manipulated her. Maybe she's very innocent. The point is, she is where she is. She is a prostitute now. Okay, I put myself into her shoes. I could say, again, another speculation, that maybe I was a celibate in my last life, and I abused that in the sense that celibacy is not natural. It is a part of human behavior. And when we deprive ourselves of certain things, we are creating a problem. Maybe this girl was a celibate in her last life, and maybe she wanted to experience more sex this lifetime. And there's nothing wrong with it, by the way. Prostitution is not wrong. We condemn it because of the crimes involved in it. But then if you look at a person, selling themselves, they are working. But if it is done in a way that is monitored, that is legal, like for instance in places like Amsterdam or in Denmark, in some of the European countries, they have actually created a very healthy, safe environment for prostitution to take place. Prostitution has been taking place throughout time. It's part of life. Okay, so we cannot say give it a blanket statement and say it's wrong. It's done in a wrong way. That's very different from being in a situation where you are a prostitute. So we are, however, in India. This is a lovely Indian girl who is now placed into a situation where she has to do what she doesn't want to do. Because that is the bottom line. And because she's in a place where she's condemned and abandoned by her family, abandoned and condemned by society, she doesn't know what to do. Okay. In that case,
could I just somebody at the door? Could I just interrupt this for a second?
Sure.
That was the maid, actually.
Okay.
Please go.
Right. Yeah. So in her situation, or if I put myself in her situation, what I can say is first I have to stop blaming. And when I stop blaming, I have to accept the situation. Okay, I have to accept the fact that I am where I am. How I got here is not relevant. I can blame this guy I fell in love. I can blame that I committed to this person blindly. But I am where I am. Accept the situation. You accept the situation by forgiving him. You accept the situation by forgiving myself. As a girl, where I am in this situation, I don't want to be in this situation. I accept that for whatever reasons, I ended up here. I can say that it was my past life karmas that brought me here. Okay, whatever things. But the fact is, I am here. That's the fact right now. The question is, after I've forgiven that person, I've forgiven myself, I'm breaking the tie, I'm breaking the chain, I'm breaking the bondage I have with this person. I'm forgiving that by forgiving him. I'm also forgiving myself because I'm blaming myself for having made this one mistake. Because frankly, if we really understand this from another perspective, it was not a mistake. It was meant to happen. That's why it happened. And I can tell you even something else, that maybe I, as this girl, knew before I was born that this is what was going to happen. Because whenever we're in a situation, like earlier I talked about Muhammad Ali, he had to buy that bike, he had to be attached to his bicycle until someone stole it, taken away from him. That taking away something he loved so much made him the greatest boxer that he was. Maybe I, as a girl, that before I was born, I chose my prarabdha to be in the situation where I am today. And because I'm in the situation where I am today, the problem is not blame. The problem is, how do I get out of it? Because how do you know the difference between staying in one place and getting out of it? I don't like where I am. If I like where I am, then stay there, then it's not a problem. But if you say that I need to go back, I want to get out of this hellhole, then you have to ask Ishvara or God to seek the guidance on how to get out. By the very process of wanting to get out, it allows you, it motivates you, it inspires you to look for ways to get out. And this is the crux of this situation. If we stick around just blaming, which is what we typically do, is blame. We blame the boy because I made a simple mistake. No. I can blame myself for being an idiot. That's not a problem. But if I turn around and say, how do I get out of this situation? Then I'm on my karmic path. Then I'm following my destiny. I'm taking the steps to grow in my destiny, because before I was born, I was put in the situation. I selected to be in the situation so that there was something for me to learn. So you see how forgiveness of the person who brought her here, forgiveness of herself, is critical first step of moving ahead. The fact that she became a prostitute is not a problem. The fact that she got abandoned or condemned by a family, that's really not a problem. We make it a big deal. But that has no relevance to our spiritual growth. What is really important in her situation, or if I was in her situation, what I would focus on is not the past. And I break those ties by forgiveness, as we talked about. What I would look forward to is, how can I make my life better? How can I get out of this situation? And I am going to beg, and I'm going to pray, and I'm going to do all the sadhanas I can to get the blessings of Ishvara, of God, to help me find a way out. And when you have that commitment and have that inspiration, you will find a way out. You will be amazed how somebody will just come and take her, whisk her away, just the way they brought her there. Once she has learned her lesson, immediately, instantaneously, she'll get out of the situation. But she cannot do that if she doesn't forgive and forget. So that's what I would do in her situation.
One more very good comment that is so important here. A lady by the name of Kalpana Vetal writes, if in a relationship or any relation, one person forgives but the other person does not, can the karma still be broken?
Absolutely.
Possible in this case.
Absolutely. You see, I think the last time I gave you an example, to clap, you need two hands. The sound of clapping doesn't happen by one hand itself. Forgiveness is all entirely up to you. It has nothing to do with that other person. So many times we say that, oh, I have to go to that other person and ask for forgiveness. No, you can do that so that that person can relieve from themselves, that they cannot have that anger towards you. That's why you do it. But for your own growth, you have to do it. So the way it works, I will try my best to seek forgiveness. Let's say I've hurt somebody. I will try my best to seek forgiveness from this person so that that person's anger may be relieved. It might be eased so that we can break the bond. But supposing the person is dead, or supposing the person is not available, and supposing the person doesn't want to even talk to you, no problem. That's his issue or her issue. What you do is you do the best you can for yourself. And because you have decided to forgive him or her, and you have decided to forgive yourself, you have broken the tie already. Let me give you another example. Yes. Supposing, let's say you kill me in this lifetime. Retribution is I come back in another lifetime, I kill you. Okay, when is this cycle going to break? It only breaks if one of us gains the wisdom. And this is why wisdom is so valued in our tradition. This is why, gurus are doing so well, even though they don't have wisdom, but gurus are doing so well, is because we as a culture value wisdom, because it is the wisdom that gives me the opportunity, gives me the recognition that I need to break this cycle, and the only way I can do this is through forgiveness. You see how powerful it is. That's why even when you titled this, Breaking the Karmic Tie, that's literally what it is. So in order for me and you to stop killing each other over lifetimes, one of us, either you or I, has to gain the wisdom to say, I'm going to break this pattern. Even if I really, really am desperate to kill you, I will not do it. In fact, I'm going to take a step further. I am going to forgive you. I am going to forgive myself for wanting to kill you. Okay? And once I break that, which is very hard to do, then I have moved on. I have evolved. Now, whether you have evolved or not, that's your issue. Yeah. If you still want to kill me, you can do so. But that's your problem. I, on the other hand, have moved on. You and I don't have a transaction anymore for killing each other in another lifetimes. And this is how the karmic patterns break. Yeah. So that's true also in that case, as she pointed out. By the way, I did appreciate a lot of the comments on the YouTube, and I will also continue to read these comments on this part. And if we have an opportunity to talk again, I'll respond, and I will respond also to some of the comments personally if I can.
When I come and visit you this year, I would like to do a video on part 3 of this, or part 4, whatever, is on repentance. Why is it needed? Is it not needed? Is it very significant? What do different traditions say, or what does your tradition say? And we may have diverse views on it, which is fine. I mean, even with some of the comments mentioned in the YouTube, I do agree. It's not easy when you are angry with the situation, and you're angry with your child or wife or business partner or your enemy. You can't see things clearly. As you said first, a situation where emotions are already involved, it's not easy to see the wisdom behind that situation.
Right.
Why that situation has come in the first place. But thank you so much, Swamiji. I have learned definitely something, and I hope whatever I've learned from you today remains, and I put it in practice as much as possible in a very stronger manner in my life. And I'm some of the audiences would also do that, that this video, even if it changes one person's life or makes someone, forgives someone, you know, that's it. I always believe in a statement, I like to end this conversation with an example. All my life, some of my best friends used to always say, about their parents, the father, that my dad does not uh, follow what he preaches. Most kids, they complain about something if they're not given something, a toy or whatever. And it's easy to blame others that, hey, follow what you preach. When I was in college, in my engineering, I started smoking for whatever reason, and it has continued. But I still used to spend time converting people who were smokers into non-smokers. I used to spend a lot of time in my college with them, a lot of time. And it just so happened, many people did ask me then, you do not follow what you preach. And I just gave them one example. And this also happened to me later. We used to have a fraternity. And a very famous movie star's secretary is no more right now. The movie star is still, he used to spend time. He used to be an alcoholic. But he used to spend time converting people from alcoholism to non-alcoholism. And he said, if due to me, you can call me an idiot, you can call me a liar, you can call me a fake guy, but due to me, 5 people left drinking. 5 people left smoking. That in itself would be a happy moment. A happy moment. It might earn me karma, it might not earn me karma, who cares? But it's a happy moment. So, I am really grateful to you, Swamiji. You have taken up this topic. And in future, of course, this is 1 year old, what we discussed. I want to talk about love. What is love? What is unconditional love? What is the real physical love? What's a boyfriend, girlfriend, and all that? And how to deal with love situations. Like today, the last example that you took was a love situation. She loved someone, she got cheated.
Yeah.
It's a great example, but the more examples we take, the more it will relate practically to the audiences.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll just add a couple of things before we close. One is that, looking at your response in terms of being a preacher that doesn't practice, and like you said, I've seen not only with that example, but the very fact the way you run Saptarishis YouTube video channel, because I know you're probably not making money out of this situation, because you could probably make a lot of money just doing Jyotisha.
Yeah.
The very fact that you're doing this is an act of love. The very fact that whether you have converted one person you have converted an alcoholic to a non-alcoholic, or a smoker to a non-smoker, if you have changed one person in one act, that is tremendous act of love. This is actually that's what we do. I mean, I could, like I said earlier, I could sit back and I could just do Jyotish and make a ton of money. But what I do is that there are very few people like me around in the world who are going around trying to talk about the wisdom, because people don't pay for this. It's only when they're in problems that they'll come to seek advice, or is that if they're bored and they've found no other entertainment, then they'll come and let's see what this Swami is saying, and he's okay, maybe he's saying a few interesting things, okay, and then it goes on. But most of what I do actually is purely based on donations, which people don't give out here in the Western world. But that's okay, because it's not about money what I do. What I do is out of love. And just to demonstrate, this is sort of like a precursor to our future videos, is that every act of giving to another person, helping another person, whether it's one person or 10,000, it doesn't matter. It's an act of love. So I believe, not just because you're interviewing me here, but I believe what you're doing with your YouTube videos is really an act of love. And it comes from a place where you want to give rather than take. And that's a fundamental distinction between someone who is grabbing versus giving. In this tradition, we learn, or we are taught to give. And giving is a great way to earn punya for a lot of reasons. First of all, to get the wisdom, but without which we cannot grow. The second thing I did want to mention is about repentance, just to give you a precursor for the next video. The word, when we use words, and this is something my gurus, Swami Dayanandaji, taught me very well, is the baggage it carries. So I have a WhatsApp group that I've been teaching on, and I've spent the last 2 months simply talking about the distinction between grace and punya. Just that difference.
Oh, wow.
And the baggage grace carries. When we say punya, it means one thing. When we say grace, that means God somewhere sits up there and decides when to give you the blessings and when not to give you the blessing. That means it's a discriminatory God. Okay. But anyway, coming to repentance, the problem with repentance is that it is associated with guilt. Now, when it comes to forgiveness, we cannot talk fully about forgiveness, oneself or forgiving others, if we don't deal with the concept of repentance and guilt. And so we will cover that in the next time we meet.
Sure, we'll do that. Thank you so much, Swamiji.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure to have this conversation again with you, and I hope to connect with you sometime soon.
Sure. Real pleasure. Thank you.